The avoidant just realized you're ignoring them, and their entire psychological system is being thrown into chaos. This isn't you being occasionally busy or taking a few hours to respond. This is complete, sustained, genuine ignoring. You're not answering their messages. You're not liking their posts. You're not asking mutual friends about them. You're not watching their stories. You're acting like they don't exist, like they're just another person you used to know, but have no current interest in or connection to. And this level of complete disregard is activating responses in the avoidant that nothing else activates. The ignoring is scrambling every pattern they rely on because it removes them from the dynamic entirely. The avoidant knows how to handle pursuit. They create distance. They know how to handle anger. They shut down emotionally. They know how to handle tears and pleas. They become logical and detached. But they have no script for being completely ignored by someone who used to care about them. Your ignoring is doing something to their psychology that's unprecedented. And what they do in response reveals everything about how the avoidance mind actually works when their usual control mechanisms are stripped away. What makes ignoring different from no contact or giving them space is the quality of indifference it communicates. No contact often still carries emotional charge. The person doing no contact is visibly hurt, is clearly protecting themselves, is obviously still affected. The avoidant can sense the continued emotional investment underneath the no contact. And that investment keeps them somewhat secure that they still matter. But true ignoring communicates something far more disturbing. You're not hurt. You're not protecting yourself. You're simply uninterested. The avoidant hasn't activated enough emotion in you to warrant hurt or protection. They're just irrelevant to you now. This message of irrelevance is what creates the specific responses that ignoring triggers, because irrelevance challenges the avoidant's sense of their own importance in ways that anger or hurt never could. The avoidance response to being ignored also depends on their level of attachment to you. If they were never that attached, if the relationship was casual for them, your ignoring might register as neutral or even relieving. But if they were actually attached, if you mattered to them even though they couldn't show it properly, your ignoring creates an internal crisis that plays out in predictable stages. Understanding these stages helps you recognize that your ignoring is having impact even when the avoidant doesn't reach out, even when they appear unaffected from the outside, even when they seem to be moving on easily. The impact is happening internally, privately, in ways the avoidant will never show you, because showing you would mean admitting you matter, and admitting you matter would mean being vulnerable, which is exactly what the avoidant's entire psychology is organized to avoid. Stage 1. Disbelief and monitoring. The avoidant's first response to being ignored is disbelief. They can't quite process that you're actually ignoring them. They assume you're just busy, you'll respond eventually, you're probably thinking about them even if you're not reaching out. The avoidant has operated from the assumption that they matter to you, that you care about them, that your emotional investment in them is significant. Your ignoring contradicts this assumption so completely that the avoidant's brain rejects the contradiction initially. They tell themselves explanations that preserve their sense of importance. You're playing hard to get, you're trying to make them jealous, you're protecting yourself from hurt by pretending not to care. During this disbelief stage, the avoidant monitors you obsessively. They're checking your social media constantly, even though they'd never admit it. They're looking for signs that you're thinking about them, that you're struggling without them, that the ignoring is performance rather than genuine. They're analyzing your posts for hidden messages directed at them. They're tracking who you're following, who's liking your content, whether you're engaging with anyone new. The monitoring is compulsive because the avoidant needs information that will confirm you still care, that your ignoring is strategy rather than authentic indifference. The obsessive checking is evidence that your ignoring is already affecting them, even though they're not reaching out. The disbelief stage also includes the avoidant testing whether you're really ignoring them. They might send a casual message to see if you respond. They might like an old post or view your story to see if you notice. They might ask a mutual friend about you in a way that seems casual, but is really fishing for information about whether you've mentioned them. These tests are the avoidant trying to determine whether your ignoring is absolute, or whether there are cracks they can exploit to restore the dynamic where you're paying attention to them, even if they're not fully reciprocating that attention. The avoidant, during disbelief, is also constructing elaborate theories about why you're ignoring them. Maybe you're dating someone new, and that person asked you to cut contact. Maybe you're going through something difficult and withdrawing from everyone. Maybe you're trying a new approach to make them chase you. The avoidant is creating explanations that make your behavior about external circumstances rather than about genuine lack of interest in them. These explanations protect their ego by suggesting your ignoring isn't really about them not mattering to you. It's about something else, something temporary, something that will eventually resolve and restore their importance in your life. Stage 2, anxiety and increased pursuit. When the disbelief stage ends, when the avoidant can no longer deny that you're genuinely ignoring them, anxiety sets in. This anxiety is particularly acute because it's unfamiliar to the avoidant. They're used to being the anxious party in the dynamic. They're used to creating distance while others pursue. But your ignoring has flipped the script entirely. Now they're the ones feeling anxious about your lack of response. They're the ones uncertain about where they stand. They're the ones experiencing the destabilizing effect of not knowing what you're thinking or feeling about them. The role reversal is deeply uncomfortable, and it's creating anxiety the avoidant doesn't know how to manage. The anxiety often drives increased pursuit from the avoidant, which is shocking behavior for someone who typically withdraws rather than pursues. The avoidant might reach out more frequently. They might ask directly why you're not responding. They might try different communication channels if you're ignoring them on one platform. They might show up places they know you'll be. This pursuit isn't the avoidant suddenly being ready for relationship. It's the avoidant trying to restore equilibrium by getting you to engage with them again, by ending the uncomfortable state of being ignored, by confirming they still have impact on you, even if that impact is negative. The pursuit during anxiety stage is particularly revealing because it shows the avoidant can pursue when their sense of control is threatened. When you were pursuing them, they withdrew because they had the power. But now that you're ignoring them, they've lost power, and the loss of power motivates pursuit designed to restore it. The avoidant isn't pursuing because they've developed capacity for intimacy. They're pursuing because your ignoring has created a power vacuum they need to fill. They need to know they matter. They need to restore the dynamic where you're the invested one and they're the detached one. And pursuit is their attempt to achieve that restoration. The anxiety also manifests as the avoidant questioning what you're ignoring means about them. If you're genuinely not interested anymore, what does that say about their value? If you've moved on completely, were they ever as important as they assumed? If you can ignore them this easily, were they replaceable all along? These questions are threatening the avoidant's self-concept. They've maintained sense of themselves as someone who matters to people even when they're not treating those people well. But your ignoring suggests maybe they don't matter. Maybe their importance was always dependent on your continued investment. Maybe without someone caring about them, they're actually insignificant. These thoughts are creating anxiety that drives the avoidant's change behavior. Stage 3. Anger and devaluation. When anxiety doesn't produce results, when the avoidant's pursuit doesn't end your ignoring, anger emerges. The avoidant becomes angry that you're not responding, that you have the audacity to ignore them, that you're not playing the role they expect you to play. The anger is defensive, a way of managing the vulnerability and hurt that your ignoring is creating. By becoming angry, the avoidant can avoid feeling rejected. They can transform your ignoring from you not wanting them into you being unreasonable, immature, playing games. The anger allows them to maintain ego protection while dealing with the reality that you're not interested in engaging with them. The anger stage often includes devaluation of you and the relationship. The avoidant starts focusing on your flaws. They tell themselves you were too needy anyway, too emotional, too demanding. They decide the relationship wasn't that good, that you weren't that compatible, that they're better off without you. They minimize what you meant to them and magnify everything that was wrong. This devaluation serves the function of making your ignoring less painful. If you weren't that great, if the relationship wasn't that important, then being ignored by you doesn't hurt. The avoidant is protecting themselves through cognitive reframing that makes you matter less so that your ignoring matters less. The anger might be expressed directly if the avoidant reaches out with hostile messages. They might accuse you of being immature for ignoring them instead of communicating. They might say you're playing games or being manipulative. They might express anger about you moving on or not caring. These expressions of anger are the avoidant externalizing the internal discomfort your ignoring is creating. They're trying to make you wrong so they can be right. They're trying to create conflict that would at least mean you're engaging with them, because conflict is better than the complete absence of engagement that ignoring represents. The anger stage can also include the avoidant bad-mouthing you to mutual friends. They're managing their hurt and confusion by creating narrative where you're the problem. They're telling people you're immature, that you can't handle direct communication, that you're being petty by ignoring them. This narrative building serves multiple purposes. It protects their ego, it attempts to control how others perceive the situation, and it's an indirect way of trying to get information about you since mutual friends might report back what they've heard. The avoidant is using anger as shield against the vulnerability your ignoring is creating. Stage 4. Bargaining and attempts at reconciliation. When anger doesn't resolve the situation, when you continue ignoring them despite their devaluation and hostility, the avoidant often moves into bargaining stage. This is where they might reach out with apologies, with explanations for their past behavior, with expressions of wanting to talk or work things out. The bargaining isn't necessarily genuine readiness for relationship. It's the avoidant trying different strategies to end the ignoring, to restore contact, to regain the sense of control and importance that your ignoring has stripped away. The apologies and reconciliation attempts are often more about managing their own discomfort with being ignored than about actual desire to repair the relationship. The bargaining might include the avoidant minimizing their past behavior while maximizing your importance. They'll say things like, "I know I wasn't perfect, but we had something good," or "I miss you and I think we should try again," or "Can we at least talk about what happened?" These statements are designed to appeal to your emotions, to remind you of positive aspects of the relationship, to create opening for you to end the ignoring. The avoidant is betting that if they can just get you to engage, they can restore the dynamic where they have power, and you're the invested one pursuing them. During bargaining, the avoidant might also make promises about change. They'll say they've been thinking about things, that they understand where they went wrong, that they want to do better. These promises are usually not backed by actual work. The avoidant isn't in therapy. They haven't done deep examination of their patterns. They're just saying what they think you want to hear to end the ignoring. The promises are performative, designed to achieve specific outcome of restoring contact rather than representing genuine commitment to transformation. If you respond to the promises, if you end the ignoring based on their words, you'll likely discover quickly that the behavior hasn't changed. The bargaining stage reveals how much your ignoring is affecting the avoidant, because bargaining requires them to be vulnerable in ways they typically avoid. They're admitting they want contact with you. They're expressing that your absence matters to them. They're showing need they usually hide. The fact that you're ignoring has pushed them to this level of vulnerability is evidence of how disturbing they find being ignored. It's activating attachment panic in them that their usual defenses can't manage, and bargaining is their attempt to resolve the panic by restoring connection. Stage 5. Depression and genuine grief. If your ignoring continues through all the previous stages, if nothing the avoidant tries succeeds in getting you to engage, they eventually move into depression stage. This is when the reality fully settles in. You're not coming back, you're genuinely done, you're not interested in them anymore. The avoidant has to sit with the loss of you, and sitting with loss without the usual defenses creates depression. They're sad in ways they rarely let themselves be sad. They're grieving the relationship, grieving their own limitations that destroyed it, grieving the possibility of you that's now foreclosed. The depression stage is characterized by the avoidant finally feeling the feelings they've been avoiding. They're not angry anymore. They're not bargaining. They're just sad. They miss you. They regret how they treated you. They wish they could undo their mistakes. They recognize what they lost. All of these feelings surface without the protection of denial or anger or bargaining, and the avoidant is experiencing grief that's probably long overdue. Your ignoring has forced them to feel loss they've been defending against. And the feeling is overwhelming because they have no practice sitting with this level of emotion. During depression stage, the avoidant withdraws from everything, not just from you. They're less social. They're going through motions of life without real engagement. They're stuck in their sadness in ways that affect all areas of functioning. The depression is the avoidance nervous system finally processing what happened, finally confronting what your ignoring has been communicating. You're gone, you're not coming back, the relationship is over, they destroyed something that mattered. This confrontation with reality is what creates the depressive response, because reality is painful and the avoidant can no longer avoid it. The avoidant during depression might reach out one final time with genuine vulnerability. Not bargaining or anger or casual testing, but real honesty about how they feel and what they're going through. This reach out, if it comes, is different from previous attempts because it's not strategic. It's not designed to manipulate you back. It's just the avoidant being honest about their pain, because the pain has become unbearable to carry alone. Whether you respond to this genuine vulnerability is entirely your choice, but understanding it's coming from depression rather than manipulation helps you assess it accurately. Stage 6. Acceptance and moving forward. Eventually, whether after weeks or months or years, the avoidant reaches acceptance stage. They accept that you're not coming back, that the ignoring is permanent, that the relationship is definitively over. The acceptance doesn't mean they're over you or that they don't still think about you. It means they've stopped actively trying to change the situation. They've stopped monitoring you obsessively. They've stopped hoping you'll reach out. They've integrated the loss into their life and they're moving forward, even though moving forward includes carrying regret about losing you. The acceptance stage looks different depending on whether the avoidant does work on themselves. Some avoidants use the loss of you and the pain of being ignored as catalysts for change. They get into therapy, they start examining their patterns, they commit to becoming someone capable of healthy relationship. These avoidants are rare, but they exist. The sustained ignoring was painful enough that it finally motivated them to address the attachment wounds that create their patterns. For these avoidants, acceptance includes gratitude toward you for holding the boundary that forced them to face themselves. But most avoidants move into acceptance without doing deep work. They accept the loss, but they don't examine what caused the loss. They don't address their patterns. They don't develop new capacity. They just move on to the next person and repeat the same cycle. For these avoidants, acceptance is resignation. They're resigned to being alone or to having superficial relationships. They're resigned to their patterns. They're resigned to the reality that they'll probably lose the next person too because they're not willing to do what would be required to be different. Your ignoring becomes another data point in their history of failed relationships, another loss they carry, another regret they live with. The acceptance stage might include the avoidant romanticizing you and the relationship in retrospect. Now that you're definitively gone, now that there's no hope of reconnection, you become idealized in their memory. You were the one who got away. You were the person they should have fought for. You were the relationship they should have tried harder in. This idealization is the avoidance mind creating narrative that's easier to live with than the truth, which is that they had you and they destroyed the relationship through their own fear and limitations. The idealization is more comfortable than accountability, what the ignoring reveals about you and about them. Your ability to genuinely ignore the avoidant reveals something important about your own healing. You can't authentically ignore someone you're still emotionally invested in. True ignoring requires genuine detachment. It requires you've processed enough that they're no longer consuming your thoughts. It requires you've built enough of a life that they're not the main character in your story anymore. The avoidant sensing your genuine ignoring is sensing your authentic moving on, and that authenticity is what makes the ignoring so powerful. Performed ignoring, where you're secretly monitoring them and hoping they'll notice you're ignoring them, doesn't have the same impact because the avoidant can sense you're still attached. The avoidant's response to your ignoring also reveals how much you actually mattered to them. If they go through all these stages, if they're clearly disturbed by the ignoring, if they pursue and bargain and grieve, you mattered significantly, even though they couldn't show it properly while you were together. The intensity of their response to being ignored is proportional to how much you meant to them. Avoidants who weren't that attached won't care much about being ignored. But avoidants who were genuinely bonded to you will go through every stage described, will be deeply affected, will struggle with the ignoring in ways that prove you were important regardless of how they treated you. Your ignoring also reveals to the avoidant what secure behavior looks like. You're demonstrating boundaries without drama. You're protecting yourself without attacking them. You're choosing yourself without making them wrong. You're showing that healthy people don't stay available to those who can't meet their needs. The avoidant is learning from your behavior, even if they're not conscious of the learning. They're seeing what self-respect looks like, what boundaries look like, what it means to prioritize your own well-being. This modeling is valuable whether or not the avoidant ever applies it to their own life. What you should and shouldn't expect from ignoring them. Ignoring the avoidant isn't a strategy to get them back. If you're ignoring them hoping they'll chase you, hoping they'll finally fight for you, hoping the ignoring will make them value you, you're going to be disappointed. Some avoidance will pursue during the anxiety stage, but pursuit driven by discomfort with being ignored is different from pursuit driven by readiness for relationship. If you respond to their pursuit, if you end the ignoring because they're finally reaching out, you'll likely discover they return to their avoidant patterns once you're re-engaged. The pursuit was about restoring their control, not about being ready to be different. You should expect that ignoring them will affect them, even if they never show you the effect. The stages described happen even if the avoidant never reaches out, even if they appear unaffected from the outside, even if they move on with someone new. The internal processing happens regardless of external behavior. Your ignoring is teaching them something about consequences, about what happens when they treat people poorly, about the reality that not everyone will wait around indefinitely. Whether that teaching translates into growth is up to them, but the teaching is happening whether or not you see results. You shouldn't expect closure or acknowledgement from ignoring them. Most avoidants won't reach out to apologize or to thank you for holding boundaries or to tell you how the ignoring affected them. They'll process privately and move forward without giving you the satisfaction of knowing you impacted them. You have to be okay with never knowing exactly how they responded to being ignored. You have to find your own closure independent of their response. The ignoring is for you, to protect your energy and time and heart from someone who couldn't treat them well. Whatever effect it has on them is secondary to the primary purpose of protecting yourself. You should expect that maintaining the ignoring will require ongoing commitment. The avoidant might try to break your ignoring months or years later. They might reach out when they're lonely, or when they see you're thriving, or when they're between relationships. Maintaining the ignoring means not responding to these later attempts, not giving them access just because time has passed, not letting temporary loneliness or curiosity make you available to someone who hasn't done the work to be different. The ignoring has to be sustained indefinitely to maintain its protective function and to maintain the boundary you've established. The bottom line, ignoring them is about you, not them. What avoidants do when you ignore them entirely ranges from obsessive monitoring to pursuit to anger to grief to acceptance. The specific responses vary by individual and by level of attachment, but the pattern is generally predictable. Understanding these responses helps you recognize that your ignoring has impact, that it's reaching them even when they don't show it, that you're not being ignored back when you ignore them. But ultimately, what the avoidant does in response to being ignored isn't the point. The point is what you're doing for yourself by maintaining the boundary. Ignoring them is you choosing yourself. It's you protecting your energy from someone who couldn't value it properly. It's you refusing to remain available to someone who was unavailable to you. It's you demonstrating self-respect through your actions rather than just in your words. It's you living the boundary that you need, regardless of how they respond to that boundary. The ignoring succeeds not when it produces specific response from them, but when it frees you from the cycle of hoping they'll change, waiting for them to choose you, accepting treatment that diminishes you. The avoidance response to being ignored reveals their internal process and proves they're affected. But their being affected doesn't obligate you to respond. Their grief doesn't require you to relieve it. Their pursuit doesn't mean you should stop ignoring them. Their bargaining doesn't mean they're actually ready to be different. You can know all of this, can understand exactly what they're going through, and can maintain your ignoring anyway, because the ignoring isn't punishment, it's protection. It's you finally prioritizing your own well-being over their comfort. And that prioritization is the healthiest thing you can do, regardless of what stages they go through in response to it.